Chief Seattle said, "Humankind has not woven the web of life, but we are simply a thread within it. Whatever we do to the web, we do unto ourselves, and all things are bound together." And I think that quote really resonates with me, because whatever we do to our environment, we're doing to the future generations. And something that I want to talk about more is, as Anishinaabe people, one of our big teachings is the idea of 7 generations. So like, we're taking care of the earth for 7 generations to come. So like, your great 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 granddaughter, grandson is who we're thinking about. And I think that Western thought just thinks about the now and the urgent, where Indigenous thought is thinking constantly about the future.
Biodiversity is the variety of all living things found on Earth, from bacteria and plants to animals and humans. Life depends on biodiversity. In a healthy and biodiverse ecosystem, every organism has a role, no matter how small, and all these organisms are working together to help their environment thrive. Unfortunately, we are currently seeing a loss of biodiversity in the natural world, so that means we're losing plants, animals, and entire ecosystems. The Earth is currently facing 2 big environmental problems: climate change and biodiversity loss. And these 2 problems are very interconnected with each other, so let's explore this concept. So, with all things being connected, one of the main reasons that we're seeing this biodiversity loss is because of climate change. Climate change is causing temperatures to increase and the Earth to heat up, which has an impact on natural habitats and ecosystems. Because of these changes, many species are being forced to find new habitats, and some of the animal or plant species that are not able to relocate to new areas may not be able to deal with these changes, and they may even become endangered. While the impacts of climate change have very big consequences on biodiversity, the main reason we are seeing an increase in biodiversity loss is because of human activities. Humans affect biodiversity in many different ways, such as by destroying natural habitats like forests, converting diverse ecosystems into monocultures of just one plant or one crop species, extracting fossil fuels, over-consuming Earth's natural resources, polluting the environment, and more. Human activities have already altered 70% of the land's surface and have already degraded up to 40% of it. Why is this important? A report from 2019 found that 1 million animal and plant species around the world now face extinction, which is the highest that number has ever been in human history. Like we said at the beginning, biodiversity loss and climate change are connected. So activities are leading to changes in Earth's climate, and human activities are also causing consequences for biodiversity. Changes in the climate and the impacts from those changes cause the loss of some plants, animals, and habitats. That loss of biodiversity means that nature loses its ability to manage greenhouse gases and to protect or restore itself against climate impacts like flooding, wildfires, and droughts, which then accelerate climate change. So it's all one big, dangerous cycle. I know this can sound pretty scary, but one good thing about how connected climate change and biodiversity are is that taking action to preserve biodiversity is also taking action on climate change. We need to address biodiversity loss and climate change together and find solutions that benefit both of them. So you might be thinking, what can be done? Science North promotes biodiversity with our Northern Forest. This natural forest, located on our grounds, showcases the diversity of plants and habitats found in this region of Ontario, and it acts as a carbon sink. Across Canada, there are so many amazing projects being led by youth that focus on protecting our country's biodiversity. For example, students in Edmonton, Alberta have planted native trees and cleaned up garbage at their local wetland to improve natural habitats. Other students in Tantramar, New Brunswick have removed invasive species from their local wetland and plant more native trees to increase biodiversity. Now we're going to talk to some science communicators, Sequoia, Shailene, and Kirsten, who are going to share their perspectives on Indigenous ways of knowing with us. The land is extremely important in Indigenous cultures since the land provides for Indigenous communities, and so they emphasize the importance of sustainable land practices. What have you learned about the management of biodiversity and living a sustainable life?
I think that Indigenous people, and this idea is like, Indigenous people are caring about the environment because they care about their area, they care about, it's about their culture, but it's so much more than like just about their culture. It's like we're caring about the environment for like the future, like I said, of 7 generations, and that's not just our 7 generations, that's everybody on the medicine wheel, 7 generations. It's like we're doing this for everyone, you know?
As Indigenous people, we have like always tried to live sustainably, like, you know, our hunting, our gathering of medicines and fruits and stuff, like we're always trying to provide for our families in such a sustainable way, and like we've been doing that for years. I think it's just important that like we continue to do that.
What does living a sustainable life mean to you?
I think to me, it means living in balance and harmony with everyone and everything around me. As mentioned, like the medicine wheel is like our one like strong like paradigm of Indigenous ways, and it doesn't only encompass just Indigenous people but everyone, and in order to be sustainable we have to take into account everyone else's you know, lives, and like be considerate of like what we're doing to the land and like what we're providing for it, what we're taking, and to always be sure like when we're hunting or like taking medicines from the land that we're only taking as much as we need.
You know, it means how we need to look at the connectivity of how, like, what am I putting out that's harming the spirit of Mother Earth, right? So it's not just like looking at like, okay, what am I doing that's causing like negative environmental impact? Like Mother Earth is spirit, so it's like when we do something negative, we're hurting spirit. And I think that as an Anishinaabe person, that's very impactful to me. So in our culture, we have a teaching called the medicine wheel, and it's more than a teaching, I would say. It's like they have so many teachings in this one wheel, but at the base of a big idea of it, a big takeaway is that we have this circular connection with everything, and everything is in balance. So the medicine wheel is divided into 4 equal parts, and each one of those parts is like no greater than the other. So if we were to remove one of those parts or make one part bigger than the other, then everything would be living in balance. So I think that as a Anishinaabe person, it's following those teachings and making sure that we're continuing balance in our, you know, environment.
What have you learned about Indigenous teachings, and how does that differ from Western views of living a sustainable life?
I think I like the word, I like that we say like Indigenous and not just like, you know, Anishinaabe people, because Indigenous people all over the world before Western contact had this understanding of science before Western people discovered science, right? Because science has always been here, like science existed before we discovered what science is. So I think that for me anyways, it's more than a theory, or it's more than, you know, an equation or anything like that. It's spiritual, you know? It's like, I don't know. It's just a feeling that I have in my heart when I like am out in nature, and I think that that's why it's just so important to me.
Well, I grew up in like Sudbury, so not off the reserve, and I've seen a lot of different ways of like living a sustainable life, and I wasn't introduced to like that sustainable way until, like, you know, I learned more about our culture and how we care for the land and our animals, and being thankful for what they provide for us. In the Western way, we kind of don't really acknowledge that we are all one with each other, and I think that's what kind of sets us back a little bit, and we don't really take into consideration like what harm we're doing to others around us. So the Indigenous ways of knowing, like it really encompasses everything, and I think that's really important.
Can you tell us a little bit about the 3 sisters teaching?
Yeah, of course. So the 3 sisters is squash, corn, and beans. And in our Indigenous ways of knowing, it teaches us that polyculture gardens work a lot better than monoculture gardens. In the Western culture, we have monoculture gardens of rows of different things, and they take up so much space, and then they all have to grow alone. And Indigenous teachings, polyculture gardens, they grow together. They all share the same soil and the same nutrients, and it shows us that we can all grow together. So how they work together is, first of all, when they're growing, they actually intertwine and hold each other. And I think that's beautiful. And when they're actually in the soil, they can feed each other. So our atmosphere is about 78% nitrogen, and most of that is unusable for plants. And they need that to grow. So the beans will actually take the nitrogen from the air with these nodules that they have in their roots that house bacteria, and they chemically communicate to turn that nitrogen into usable nutrients, and then they feed that nutrients to the other two sisters, and they can all grow together in harmony.
It suggests that we rely on each other to grow, and like I mentioned with sustainability, like we all have to like consider each other, and with the plants they do a really good job at making sure that they grow with one another and not on their own, rather than a monocultural farming. So I think that also includes that individualistic thinking. We don't have that in our Indigenous perspectives, whereas in some Western views there is a lot of me, and it's but that polyculture is a good teaching for us as Indigenous people, because it shows that we have to rely on each other to move forward.
And it suggests that working together is always better than working apart and being apart, and that's such an important teaching in Indigenous culture, because when we all work together we can accomplish so much more.
We've talked all about biodiversity, its relationship with climate change, and how folks from across Canada have had an impact on supporting biodiversity. Well, you can take part in these actions too. Advocate for more green spaces in your community, challenge construction projects that threaten to destroy protected green spaces, start community gardens at your school or in your community that focus on planting native and pollinator plants, and help keep the existing green spaces in your community healthy by keeping them free of garbage. So thank you for watching, and make sure to follow us on all our social medias.